The slosh of water against metal created a hypnotic rhythm that held Georgy Dimitrov spellbound. The young Bulgarian lieutenant stood rigid, his weathered hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the humming white machine in the corner of the American camp kitchen. Inside its illuminated chamber, jets of steaming water pulsed against stacks of military-issue plates and cups, washing away remnants of the morning meal. Steam escaped in wisps from the edges of the door, carrying the sharp scent of chemical soap unlike anything he had known in Sofia. The other prisoners crowded behind him, their whispers forming a current of disbelief. They had been captured barely 2 weeks earlier, marched from the battlefields of northern Italy where they had fought alongside German forces. Now, standing in this sterile kitchen in Camp Atterbury, Indiana, they watched as a single American private loaded hundreds of dishes into a machine that did the work of 20 men.
"It is a trick," muttered Sergeant Ivanov beside him. "Some American magic show to demoralize us." But Georgy knew better. He had studied engineering before the war, read technical journals smuggled from Germany about innovations of the West. Yet seeing this machine, this automatic dishwasher, humming efficiently in a prison camp kitchen, seemed to mock everything he had been told about American industrial might. If their army could afford such luxuries for washing mere plates, what resources must they command for building tanks and planes? The kitchen sergeant noticed their fascination and approached with an amused expression. "First time seeing a dishwasher, huh? This old thing's been washing plates since '42. Got an even bigger one in the main mess." As the cycle finished with a decisive click, the American opened the door, releasing a cloud of steam. When it cleared, rows of perfectly clean dishes gleamed under the fluorescent lights.
Not a spot remained, not a trace of food, just immaculate ceramic ready to be stacked and used again. Georgy felt something shift inside him, a small fracture in the foundation of certainty upon which he had built his understanding of the world. "Imagine," whispered Nikola, a young private from a mountain village near the Serbian border, "what our mothers would give for such a marvel." The prisoners were ushered out of the kitchen, but the image of swirling water and gleaming metal stayed with Georgy long after the door closed behind them. It was the first glimpse into a reality that would continue to unfold before their disbelieving eyes, a world where Americans seemed to have conquered not just nations, but the drudgery of everyday life itself. As they marched back to their barracks across the immaculately maintained grounds of Camp Atterbury, the Bulgarian soldiers exchanged glances laden with unspoken questions. They had been prepared for torture, for humiliation, for the brutality that propaganda had assured them awaited enemies of the Allied forces. Instead, they encountered hot showers, 3 full meals daily, and now machines that washed dishes without human hands. Captain Petar Stoyanov, the highest-ranking Bulgarian officer in their group, maintained a stoic expression despite the evident comfort. A career military man from a family with deep roots in the old Royal Army, he had warned the men repeatedly not to be fooled by American hospitality. "It is psychological warfare," he insisted during their first night in camp. "They soften us with comforts, then extract information when our guard is down." Yet 2 weeks had passed, and no interrogations had come. Instead, they received medical examinations, new clothing, regular meals, and now this, a glimpse into kitchens where even dishwashing had been conquered by American ingenuity. The contradiction weighed on Georgy's mind as he sat on his bunk, absently thumbing through an English-language magazine the guards had distributed. "Look at this," he said quietly to Nikola, who occupied the adjacent bunk. "They plan to put these dishwashing machines in ordinary homes, not just camps or restaurants, but houses where regular people live." Nikola's brow furrowed. "My mother would not believe such a thing exists. She has spent her life with hands raw from washing. Even our mayor's wife does not have running water in her kitchen." Their conversation was interrupted as a young American corporal appeared. "Mail call," he announced, holding up a stack of envelopes. "We've got responses from your Red Cross notifications." A ripple moved through the room. Letters from home had seemed an impossible dream, yet here they were, evidence that their families knew they lived. As envelopes were distributed, Georgie watched his comrades' faces transform. Stern men who had faced artillery without flinching now blinked back tears as they recognized handwriting from wives and mothers. Yet even this kindness carried its own form of pain. Between the censored lines of family news lay implicit comparisons that could not be ignored. Mothers wrote of food shortages in Sofia, of coal rationing, of making do with cardboard and shoe soles. Meanwhile, their sons sat in heated barracks with 3 meals daily and machine-washed dishes. The gap between these realities was a chasm that words alone could not bridge. As night fell over Camp Atterbury, Georgie lay awake listening to the occasional muffled sob of men reading letters by flashlight. The dishwashing machine he had witnessed that morning seemed suddenly connected to these tears. Both were evidence of a world so different from their own that it defied the stories they had been told. If America could afford to mechanize such mundane tasks, even for prisoners, while at home their families struggled for basic necessities, what did that reveal about the true balance of power in this global conflict? 3 days after their introduction to the dishwashing machine, the Bulgarian prisoners were assigned to various work details around Camp Atterbury. Contrary to their expectations of brutal labor, the Americans designated tasks according to previous civilian occupations. Georgie, with his partial engineering education, was assigned to the maintenance workshop, where vehicles and equipment were repaired under supervision. The maintenance shop became Georgie's window into American mechanical thinking. Rows of jeeps, trucks, and tractors filled the cavernous space, each undergoing various stages of repair. The tools alone stunned him. Pneumatic wrenches that required no physical strain, drill presses that cut through metal with ease, welding equipment that joined materials permanently within seconds. "You know how to read a schematic?" asked the workshop supervisor, a middle-aged sergeant named Miller with grease-stained hands and a surprisingly gentle manner. He spread a technical drawing across the workbench, watching Georgie's reaction. "Yes," Georgie replied hesitantly, his English still formal and stilted. "I studied 2 years engineering before the war." Miller nodded, seemingly unsurprised. "Good. We've got a backlog of minor repairs. Nothing classified, just basic maintenance. Show me you can handle a wrench without breaking anything, and I'll put you on the schedule." That first day, Georgie merely observed, handing tools to American mechanics as they worked. Yet even this passive role revealed startling insights. The Americans approached machinery with a casual familiarity that spoke of lifelong exposure. Most striking was their relationship with time, the precious commodity that Bulgarian workers stretched and conserved through endless improvisation was treated here with utilitarian indifference. "If it takes more than 20 minutes to fix," explained Miller during a coffee break, "we usually just swap in a replacement part and send the broken one back to the factory. Faster that way." Georgie nearly choked on his coffee, rich, hot, and freely available from a massive steel urn. The concept of replacement rather than repair violated everything he understood about resource management. In Bulgaria, even wealthy households patched and mended until items disintegrated entirely. Here, efficiency trumped conservation at every turn. During their lunch break, Nicholas sought him out, eyes wide with fresh amazement. "You must see the kitchen," he whispered, glancing around as if sharing state secrets. "They have a machine that peels potatoes, hundreds in minutes, and another that slices bread perfectly, each piece the same thickness." Georgie nodded, no longer surprised. "The Americans seem to have a machine for everything." "But that is what troubles me," Nicola continued, lowering his voice further. "If they have machines for such small tasks, what must they have for making weapons? Captain Stoyanov saw papers today. Hundreds of tanks produced weekly, thousands of planes. Numbers so large he thought they were printing errors." Both men fell silent, contemplating the implications. Their conversation was interrupted by the return of American mechanics, laughing and joking as they filed back into the workshop. One stopped, offering Georgie a stick of chewing gum, a small luxury he had only heard about before the war. "Try it," the mechanic said with a friendly nod. "Keeps your mouth busy while your hands are working." The simple gesture, this casual sharing with a captured enemy, contained a confidence that bordered on arrogance. These Americans did not fear prisoners stealing their tools or sabotaging their vehicles. Their security came not from guards and threats, but from the unspoken understanding that no sane person would choose hunger and hardship over the abundance within these fences. That evening, as prisoners gathered in the recreation hall, another luxury that defied expectation, rumors circulated about what different men had witnessed in their work assignments. The laundry detail described massive washing machines that cleaned and dried hundreds of uniforms daily. The medical assistants spoke of an X-ray machine that photographed bones through flesh. The kitchen workers continued their wide-eyed accounts of mechanical food preparation. Captain Stoyanov alone remained skeptical, gathering a small circle of loyal officers in the corner.
"They show us these conveniences deliberately," he insisted, his voice tight with conviction. "It is a form of propaganda, meant to demoralize us, to make us question our own society." "But, Captain," ventured a young lieutenant, "what if it is simply how they live? What if these machines are truly common here?" Stoyanov's expression hardened. "Then we must ask ourselves why our allies never shared such innovations. Why our German friends, who spoke of superior technology, never mentioned these everyday marvels. And why our leaders promised victory against a nation that apparently has enough resources to mechanize even the washing of dishes." The questions hung in the air, unanswered but impossible to dismiss. As the prisoners returned to their barracks that night, the image of the dishwashing machine, that first mechanical wonder they had encountered, seemed to have multiplied into 100 technological marvels, each challenging their previous understanding of what was possible.
Georgy lay awake that night, turning Stoyanov's words over in his mind. The captain had intended to reinforce skepticism, yet had instead articulated the very doubt gnawing at them all. If these comforts existed not as exceptional luxuries, but as American standards, what did that reveal about the true nature of the conflict they had joined? And how could they reconcile their previous beliefs with what their eyes now witnessed daily? In early May, the camp administration announced a program that stunned even the most adaptable prisoners. Educational classes would be offered to those interested, including English language, American history, and, most surprisingly, technical training in mechanics, electronics, and modern appliance repair. The opportunity to learn the very technologies that had so amazed them was presented not as propaganda, but as practical preparation for the post-war world. "The war won't last forever," explained the education officer during the announcement.
"These skills will be valuable wherever you end up after peace comes." Captain Stoyanov immediately discouraged participation, calling it collaboration with the enemy. Yet, when registration opened the following day, more than half the Bulgarian prisoners signed up, including several of Stoyanov's once loyal officers. The fracture that had begun with a dishwashing machine had widened into a fundamental division about what constituted loyalty in the face of undeniable evidence. The technical class that Georgy joined met 3 evenings weekly in a converted storage building. Their instructor, a civilian engineer named Howard Mason, approached the subject with infectious enthusiasm. Unlike the military personnel, who maintained professional distance, Mason spoke to the prisoners as fellow learners, potential colleagues, rather than defeated enemies. "The principles are what matter," he explained during their first session, sketching diagrams of electric motors on a blackboard.
Once you understand how energy transforms from one form to another, you can understand any machine ever built or build new ones yourself. After their third class, Mason brought in what he called teaching aids, a disassembled dishwasher, a washing machine motor, and various household appliances in different stages of deconstruction. The prisoners gathered around these mechanical treasures like children with new toys, hands tentatively exploring components, voices rising with questions and observations. "The principle is simple," Mason explained, pointing to the dishwasher's pump system. "Pressurized water directed through specific pathways. The genius is in making it reliable, affordable, and simple enough for anyone to operate without training." As Georgy examined the dishwasher's interior, the very machine that had first captured their attention, he realized how elegantly straightforward the design actually was. The technology that had seemed magical now revealed itself as clever but comprehensible, built from components that any competent workshop could potentially manufacture. Could Bulgaria build these? He asked Mason directly, surprising himself with the boldness of the question. The engineer considered this thoughtfully. The technical capability? Absolutely. Any industrialized nation could manufacture these given the right priorities. It's not about technical secrets. Most of these designs are available in public patents. It's about economic systems, infrastructure, and national priorities. He gestured toward the disassembled appliances. America chose to mechanize everyday life because we value individual time differently. We believe ordinary people shouldn't spend their lives on repetitive labor when machines can do it instead. The concept lingered with Georgie long after class ended. What his society valued, what it prioritized, had always seemed natural and inevitable, the only possible way of organizing human effort. Yet here was a different model, one that placed the liberation of common people's time among its highest achievements. That evening, as prisoners prepared for sleep, Nicola approached Georgie's bunk, speaking in a hushed voice. "The captain is furious about these classes, says we're being indoctrinated, turned against our homeland." Georgie considered this. Is learning how things work indoctrination? The dishwasher functions by the same principles whether in America or Bulgaria. "It's not about the machine," Nicola replied. "It's about what it represents. If ordinary Americans have such conveniences while our generals still employ servants to wash their dishes by hand, what does that tell us about who is truly winning this war of ideas?" The question hung between them, too dangerous to answer directly, yet impossible to dismiss. Across the barracks, small groups of men continued similar conversations, voices low but intense. What began as amazement at American technology had evolved into deeper questions about social organization, about prosperity, about the very foundations of the competing worlds they were caught between. Captain Stoyanov, sensing his eroding authority, scheduled a mandatory meeting for the following evening. His expression, once commanding, now held a hint of desperation as he addressed the assembled prisoners. "We must remember who we are," he began, standing rigidly before them. "These comforts, these machines, they are temporary illusions. When we return home, we will need the strength of character that comes from honest labor, not the weakness of dependence on mechanical aids." A lieutenant who had been attending the technical classes raised his hand. "With respect, Captain, if machines can wash dishes and clothes, couldn't they also help rebuild our bombed cities? Couldn't they allow our people more time for education, for family, for advancement?" The question was posed politely, but contained a fundamental challenge. Stoyanov's response, that such thinking represented American corruption of Bulgarian values, satisfied few. The meeting ended without resolution, the divide between prisoners wider than ever. Summer arrived with unexpected intensity, bringing sweltering Midwestern heat that transformed the camp into a crucible of discomfort. Yet even in this, American ingenuity prevailed. Electric fans appeared in barracks and workspaces, mechanically circulating air where prisoners had expected to suffer in stillness. The mess hall, where they had first encountered the dishwashing machine, now featured a remarkable cooling system that blew chilled air through overhead vents, maintaining a temperature that seemed to defy the season itself. "Air conditioning," explained Sergeant Miller, noticing Georgie's upward gaze during lunch. "Same principle as a refrigerator, just bigger. Cools the whole building." By July, the Bulgarian prisoners had grown accustomed to mechanical marvels. The dishwasher that once provoked disbelieving stares now received barely a glance as kitchen staff loaded and unloaded it between meals. Washing machines, clothes dryers, electric mixers, all had been integrated into their understanding of American life. Yet the sense of wonder had not diminished so much as transformed into a deeper questioning. If technology could so thoroughly reshape domestic labor, what other aspects of human existence might be similarly revolutionized? This question gained unexpected urgency when Howard Mason announced a special demonstration for the technical class.
Something that might interest you, engineers, he said with a knowing smile. The future of home technology. The prisoners gathered expectantly in the classroom that evening. Mason had arranged several objects on the demonstration table. A rectangular box with dials and switches, a circular device resembling a flat drum, and various electronic components unfamiliar even to Georgie. Prototype home technologies, Mason explained, patting the rectangular box. This one's a microwave oven, cooks food using radio waves instead of heat, can boil water in 30 seconds. He gestured to the drum-like object. And this is an experimental dishwasher that uses ultrasonic vibrations instead of water jets, cleans without detergent using a fraction of the water. The prisoners exchanged glances. Having just grown accustomed to conventional dishwashers, the idea that such technology was already being surpassed seemed almost absurd. Yet Mason demonstrated both devices, heating a cup of water instantly without flame and cleaning a greasy plate with vibrations imperceptible to the human ear. These aren't science fiction, he emphasized, noting their expressions.
They're already moving toward production. After the war, American homes will have technologies we're only beginning to imagine. For Georgie, the demonstration crystallized a realization that had been forming gradually over months of captivity. The automatic dishwasher they had first encountered, the machine that had so shocked them with its mundane magic, was not the culmination of American innovation, but merely one early step in a continuous process of advancement. While his homeland struggled to maintain traditional ways of life, America raced forward, constantly rendering today's marvels obsolete through tomorrow's innovations. That evening, as prisoners discussed Mason's demonstration, Captain Stoyanov made his final attempt to reassert ideological control. "These gadgets are meaningless distractions," he insisted, addressing a dwindling group of loyalists.
True national strength comes from our traditions, our cultural unity, not from machines that wash dishes or cool air. A corporal who had remained neutral in previous debates finally spoke up. My grandmother spent 4 hours daily carrying water from the village well. My mother spent 3 hours washing dishes after every family gathering. If machines could have saved them that labor, would our traditions truly have suffered? Or might they have had time to preserve our stories, our songs, our true cultural heritage instead? Stoyanov had no answer that satisfied. His authority, once absolute among the prisoners, had eroded beyond recovery, not through American propaganda or coercion, but through the simple, undeniable evidence of a different possibility for organizing human society. In August, as Allied victories in Europe accelerated, camp administrators began preparing prisoners for eventual repatriation. The mood among Bulgarians was surprisingly ambivalent. While all longed to see families and homeland, many openly discussed their concerns about returning to a world without the technologies they had come to appreciate, not as luxuries, but as representations of a different relationship between humans and labor. Georgie found himself in the maintenance workshop, making final repairs to vehicles he had come to know intimately over months of work. Sergeant Miller approached, clipboard in hand as always. "Heard you folks might be heading home soon," he said, checking items off his list. "What will you tell them about America?" The question was asked casually, but contained depths Georgie had pondered for weeks. "I will tell them about the dishwashing machine," he answered finally, "about how it changed my understanding of what progress truly means." Miller looked up, surprised by the philosophical response. "A dishwasher? That's what you'll remember most?" "It was the first American miracle we witnessed," Georgie explained. "Before tanks or planes or weapons. A machine that performed the most mundane task, washing dishes, with perfect efficiency. It suggested that your society values even ordinary people's time as precious." He paused, choosing words carefully. "In my country, we were taught that sacrifice brings national glory. Here, I learned that perhaps true national achievement lies in reducing unnecessary sacrifice." Miller nodded slowly, seemingly struck by the observation. "Never thought about it that way. Guess we take some things for granted." He extended his hand, a gesture of equality rarely offered to prisoners.
Hope you get to build some of these machines back home someday. As they boarded transport trucks for the journey to the repatriation center, Georgy noticed Captain Stoyanov standing slightly apart. His influence had diminished steadily, his insistence on rejecting American innovations increasingly viewed as stubborn rather than principled.
Yet in this final moment, he approached Georgie with unexpected candor. "You believe these machines represent a better world," he said quietly. "Perhaps you are right, but remember that technology serves those who control it. When we return home, we may find new masters waiting, ones who use machines not to liberate time, but to monitor it." He gestured toward the camp with its electronic security systems. Convenience and control are often two sides of the same coin. Years later, when Georgie finally returned to Sofia, he found a city transformed not by American-style modernization, but by Soviet industrialization. Factory production, collective farming, and military strength received priority investment, while household technologies remained largely unchanged from pre-war standards. The dishwashing machine he had described to disbelieving family members remained an alien concept, as distant as the America that had produced it. Yet the experience had planted seeds that continued to grow despite unfavorable conditions. In his small apartment, Georgie created sketches of labor-saving devices based on principles learned at Camp Atterbury. He spoke carefully to trusted friends about different visions of progress, about technology that served ordinary people rather than state ambitions. The mechanical miracle that had first captured his imagination, that humble dishwasher in an enemy camp kitchen, remained his private symbol of what human ingenuity might accomplish when directed toward freeing people from drudgery rather than forcing them into new forms of servitude. The question that had formed in his mind that first morning, watching steam rise from gleaming plates, never fully left him. What truly marks a society's advancement? The weapons it creates, or the labor it eliminates? The answer, he concluded after decades of reflection, was visible in the homes of ordinary citizens, in the small daily liberations that allowed human creativity to flourish where mechanical precision could suffice. Perhaps someday, he thought, watching his grandson struggling with homework after helping his mother wash dishes by hand, the cycle would complete itself. Perhaps the seeds planted by those strange days of captivity would finally bloom in a generation that understood that true progress isn't measured by missiles or monuments, but by the humble hum of machines that free human hands for better things than washing yesterday's plates.